So I got hired to fix a lot of things inside a $13 billion company. And one was a weird situation with executive coaches gone wild. We had dozens of executive coaches with no accountability, working for years in some cases, funded by an HR fund for executive development, reporting mostly vague results, and more managers were lining up for their own coach. I also did executive coaching, but this was the first time I had a view of many coaches across an enterprise. The deeper I dug, the uglier it looked. But rather than talk generally about this company's approach to coaching, I learned some things that can help you, the coaches, understand when and how you get value from your coach. The central question of this video is, how do I know if the coaching I am getting is any good? I analyzed who's getting coaching, how it is evaluated, and what they think the company should do to make sure we're getting the most value for the money spent. As I interviewed those being coached, I found 3 situations. One I call the PhD candidate coaching model. These coaches had advanced degrees, were academic, loved to preach concepts, coached as if the coachee was in a PhD program where the coachee read a lot, did some assignments where they showed comprehension of concepts but focused very little on behavioral change. The PhD candidate type coaches had very little interest in aligning with our competency models, leadership curriculum, or anything we were up to as a company because they knew best. The second coaching group I'll call Rent a Friend. The coaching relationship mainly was listening, and the coach provided very non-directive feedback. There is value in having a sounding board and letting the coachee come to their own conclusions. And like the PhD candidate group, they too lacked clear behavioral outcomes, citing examples of very vague outcomes. The third group was a pleasant surprise. I'll call this group Get Her Done, because they were the only set of coachees who could give me critical incidents or specific examples of behavior changes and the results they produced in the workplace. The outcomes they pursued were very relevant to the role and job demands they were under. You might asking, the other coaches weren't? The PhD candidate type coaches focused on their favorite leadership theories. The Rent a Friend coaches went where the coachee wanted to go and usually didn't go beyond that. But my third group, the Get Her Done coaches, analyzed the demands of the role, feedback from peers and bosses, and from that identified key outcomes to focus on for a specific period of time, usually within 12 weeks. You might be asking how my Get Her Done coaches could help a coachee acquire complex skills in such a short period. Their secret was that they broke down complex skills, such as emotional intelligence, into more discrete behaviors or sub-skills. To continue with the emotional intelligence example, my PhD candidate type coaches would assign 3 books by Daniel Goleman, several articles, and focus the coaching conversation on how well they understood the materials assigned. In contrast, my Get Her Done coaches would focus on situations, triggers, or cues, when the coachee either responded skillfully or didn't, and set the goal to respond more skillfully to situations common to their role. These coaches would bring in a little conceptual support when the coachee struggled with a situation but kept the focus on the skillful response. My Get Her Done coaches took one additional step that made a big difference. They encouraged the coachee to engage trusted peers, direct reports, and, yes, bosses in support of their desire to behave differently in critical situations. The next level out of coaches provided support and feedback and, in a way, became coachees as they too tried to change their behavior in similar situations. I noticed differences in the situation of the coachee that mattered to the type of coach they preferred. Those new to a demanding role benefited greatly from the Get Her Done coaches, as they focused on results within a period, were very behaviorally focused, and encouraged the coachee to become a coach to others. In contrast, well-established leaders preferred either the PhD candidate type approach if they were academically oriented, or in the case of high-control leaders, the Rent a Friend, because it allowed the coachee to control the conversation. This is also why, when I pushed for the company to adopt the high-result Get Her Done type coaches, I got pushback. We ended up modifying the coaching intake process to allow for different coaching styles to best match the needs of the coaches. Let's focus once again on the central question of this video. How does this help me know if I'm getting effective coaching? If you're a high-control kind of leader who just wants a sounding board, a version of Rent a Friend might be just what the doctor ordered. You control the conversation, direction of coaching, and ultimately decide if you got enough value to continue the relationship. I generally don't advocate for the PhD candidate type of coaching unless you are pursuing an academic degree. I say this because my experience is that those who know a lot about leadership make good professors, but poor leaders. The only exception I've seen with this is a company that did a one-year mini MBA program for high-potential individual contributors. In that case, more academically oriented coaches were useful in meeting program goals. Most coaches do best with a get-her-done type coach if they do the following 4 things. 1. Focus on a 12-week coaching cycle, where the coachee makes measurable progress within that period. The best practice I came to embrace is to use the first 2 weeks to analyze role demands, role-based competency models, get feedback on strengths and development priorities from peers, bosses, and other key stakeholders. If you need more time to do an assessment, stretch this to no more than 4 weeks of analysis and outcome focus. The next 6 to 8 weeks are about practicing new behaviors in key situations. The best practice is for the coachee to engage peers, direct reports, and others in support and feedback roles. The final 1 or 2 weeks are understanding and measuring the extent to which you got the ball in the end zone. What worked? Why? What didn't? Why? And adjustments to make in the next coaching period. Rinse and repeat for the next 12-week cycle. 2. Make key situations and skillful behavior in those situations your focus. Doing so accelerates development and makes it easier for you to coach others. 3. Engage the support and accountability of peers, bosses, and other key stakeholders. It's a humble and effective approach to let others know what you want to do better, when, and get their insights on how that's going. When you do so, you're much more likely to have them reciprocate as you develop a coaching relationship with them. Win-win. 4. Build on your strengths. The easiest change is to do more of what you do well, sometimes just more often. Of course, you want to understand why you don't always act in skillful ways, but if you act skillfully sometimes, you've got the arrow in your quiver and need to use it more often. In this video, we asked, what makes for effective coaching? The more behaviorally oriented, that is to say, the more you can narrow down a desired behavior to a specific situation, the easier it is to measure. While I advocated for a 12-week coaching cycle, there are times when it's in your best interest to change that. Thanks for joining us today at the Change Capability Institute. Subscribe to the channel to see more content like this.